Good afternoon and welcome to today's debate. Today's debate is for Northern New Mexico's residents who have to make a choice in the next 20 to 25 days in the New Mexican Republican primary. Today's candidates are running for the open congressional seat in District 3 of New Mexico. The candidates participating today are Alexis Martinez-Johnson and Harry Montoya. A few updates before we get underway. As a reminder, this hour is being recorded, and when it's finished, we're turning it into a YouTube file and sending it to our members in the FRW clubs around Northern New Mexico and to our counterparts in the GOP clubs, and it'll be posted also on our Facebook and web pages. And second, ahead of the fact, before I get into question rules, just so you know, we decided not to ask questions about the Second Amendment and pro-life. They didn't come up much from our members, and I think that's because they think they know the response that Republican candidates are going to have, that they're self-evident. So while there aren't going to be questions on it, if you'd like to address something on these issues in your opening or closing remarks, you certainly can. Before I explain the question format and debate structure, I'd like to introduce myself and Sadie Boyer, the questioner for today. My name is Anita Statman, and I'm honored to be the host and moderator of today's event. My career of 30 years was in emergency management and homeland security, to include serving as Governor Martinez's Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Emergency Management and Homeland Security. Now retired, I currently serve as the president of the Santa Fe Federated Republican Women, and I serve on the executive committee of the Santa Fe County GOP. I'm also the New Mexico FRW Region A director that encompasses the 4 northern clubs in New Mexico, including Four Corners, Los Alamos, Taos, and Santa Fe. Region A, together with our county GOP clubs, are supporting today's debate. The questioner for today will be Sadie Boyer. Excuse me. Sadie is president of the Taos Federated Republican Women. She is second vice chair of the Taos GOP, and for the New Mexico FRW, she serves as the bylaws chair and the parliamentarian. The general rules that we've all agreed to for the questions are as follows. The question pool was derived by surveying FRW members and GOP members in northern New Mexico. The questions and question order is preset on a script. No question was specifically tailored for a single candidate. And the question team categorized questions into 6 topic areas. Regarding timekeeping, we ask you, the candidates, to monitor your time. We will give you a quick remark that time's up at the end of your time, and if you don't stop, we'll mute your microphones. The candidates have agreed that Ms. Johnson will go first with her opening statements, followed by Mr. Montoya. The order will be reversed for closing statements. Now, regarding the process of questions, I will introduce each topic to create a context for questions. The first question will be posed to Ms. Johnson, who will have 2 minutes to respond. Then Mr. Montoya will be allotted 1 minute to respond to the same question. If during a reply, a candidate evokes another candidate's name, the named candidate will receive 30 seconds to respond. The second question within the same topic will be posed to Mr. Johnson, who will be allotted
Mr. Montoya.
Mr. Montoya, I'm sorry, thank you. Mr. Montoya, who will be allotted 2 minutes to respond. Ms. Johnson will then respond with a 1 minute answer. This concludes the process for a given topic. As you can see, this process is designed to offer both of you the first 2 minute response to a question within each topic area. This process is repeated 6 times for each topic. With that said, it's time for candidate introductions. After my brief introductions, the candidates will be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves and their platforms. Now I'll introduce Ms. Martinez-Johnson. Alexis Johnson was raised in New Mexico, spending several years in Roswell and graduating high school in Las Cruces. She attended both Vanderbilt University and New Mexico Tech in Socorro. After earning her engineering degree at New Mexico Tech, Martinez-Johnson worked in the energy sector in the Permian Basin. With family ties in Hardin County and raised by her grandparents, she has a strong love and appreciation of New Mexico values. Her platform includes the economy, education, the environment, secure borders, and pro-life issues. Alexis resides in Santa Fe with her husband and 4 children. Now, Mr. Montoya. Harry Montoya was born and raised in northern New Mexico. He has dedicated his entire life to helping those who suffer from substance abuse. Mr. Montoya has been pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-religious freedom his entire life. He has not wavered on these issues. A former Democrat, Mr. Montoya witnessed the radical changes in the Democrat Party and is now a proud Republican. He is an active member of the Knights of Columbus, and at his church, he serves as lector and acolyte. He founded Hands Across Cultures, which educates youth on addiction prevention. He resides in Santa Fe with his wife of 39 years, Doris. Now, let's hear from the candidates. As a reminder, we don't have props, lights for timekeeping, so we will simply mute your mics at the end of your time. Ms. Johnson, you're first. Start when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Anita, Sadie, and Rip, and the other people that are here, as well as Harry. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you and for you to get the voice of your candidates. So my name again is Alexis Martinez Johnson, and I am so excited to be gaining such a momentum here in April for this campaign. And we are just going forth with our messages of our faith, our family, and our freedom, and our New Mexican pride. I am running this race because of the far left assault on New Mexicans, such as limiting our gun rights, ending the lives of babies, and putting New Mexicans out of jobs. I'm here to fight for veterans, our education, and to reduce crime. I do not come from wealth or a powerful political family, and I believe it's time for one of us, the forgotten New Mexican, to have a voice. I bring a very unique, specific skill set in that I'm an engineer, a problem solver, and a negotiator. I look forward to elevating New Mexico with you, and I support our President Trump and securing our border, holding China accountable, and promoting New Mexican jobs. And like Anita said before, I live here in Santa Fe with my husband of about 10 years now, almost a decade, and my children. I have 4 lovely children. And some of those children, they were twins. They were born between 30 and 31 weeks. And so for that, being pro-life is a very much a part of who I am and my family. I've been very vocal here in Santa Fe and throughout New Mexico regarding pro-Second Amendment rights. As someone that comes from the ranching community and as a mother of 4 children, it's my right to bear arms, and I will always push that here in New Mexico and our greater U.S. I just want to tell everybody that, I am the best candidate here. I have the energy and vitality to get to the groups that we need to flip this district red. As you know, we are overcome by the population of Democrats here, not only in Santa Fe, but all of District 3. So how are you going to flip this district? Well, you're going to need to flip that moderate Democrat vote. You're also going to need to gain the vote of millennials and also voters in Indian country, as well as your independents. I have been doing that across the campaign, and I look forward to winning with you. Please vote Alexis M. Johnson. I'm the 3rd one on the ballot. And muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
Mr. Montoya, please present your opening statement.
Okay, thank you, Anita. Thank you, Sadie and Sharon. The Federated Republican Women have always been the backbone for the Republican Party, and I want to thank you all for the job that you do and the work that you do on behalf of Republican candidates and Republican elected officials as well. Thank you so much. My name is Harry Montoya. I'm a multi-generational native New Mexican, being born and raised here in northern New Mexico, in the district that I will, God willing, be representing. As you mentioned, Anita, I've been a member of the Knights of Columbus, have been there since 1993. It's been an organization that has deeply influenced my personal beliefs, my involvement in the community, my faith in God, and certainly the service to my family, my community, and to God. I am a twice elected. I was initially appointed to the Poaca Valley School Board and then elected twice subsequent to that. I was elected for the first term, and then the second term, I guess people thought I was doing a pretty decent job, so I ran unopposed, which I tell people out there, if you're ever running for a political office, run unopposed. That's the best way to run. And certainly, I was fortunate to have done some good things, served as the president for the New Mexico School Board Association, served as a delegate to the National School Board Association as well. So I began my cutting my teeth, so to speak, in terms of policy and legislation with the school boards. Subsequent to that, I was not going to be running again. You know, I felt that 2 terms was sufficient, allow someone else to step up and serve the community as well. So as I was terming out, I was approached and asked to run for the Santa Fe County Commission, which honestly I had no intentions of doing. But, you know, with the support, with the people, you know, that were asking me to do it, I ran for the county commission and was successful in winning that election. I was also re-elected the second time, and I'll tell you what, I've been fortunate. The second time I ran for the county commission, I ran unopposed. So again, I believe that the people in the community, in the district, had the confidence in me in the work that I was doing as a county commissioner. So twice I've been fortunate to have run unopposed and to have served the community. I am a former Democrat, as you mentioned, Anita, and you know, I have to say that, you know, like Bill Redmond, who is the last Republican who served in this congressional district as a Republican, Ronald Reagan, and even our current president, Donald Trump, I walked away from the party that just does not govern for the people. In fact, they govern against the will of the people. You know, instead of serving the average American, they're more into serving Wall Street and other places. So I will continue on. My time's up.
Thank you. So let's get to the questions. Topic 1 regards the COVID-19 response. The ramp up of the nation's diagnostic testing for the disease was not without its problems, as can be expected. However, the news media assumed that the federal government was not ready for a pandemic and has criticized its every step. I have to say, because I know a thing or two about federal, state, and local emergency response, that the response was uneven because the COVID-19 is a low probability, high consequence event of the magnitude of 9/11. To stock supplies for the nation for every low probability, high consequence event would be untenable and lead to unwanted deficits. Alas, it seems the facts don't matter to the media. Partisan attacks continue to be made over implementation of the response as long as those criticized are Republicans. Sadie, question 1, please.
What are the most dangerous precedents you see being set as part of our federal response to the current coronavirus? How should mitigation of these types of events happen in the future?
Ms. Johnson, you'll go first, and you have 2 minutes to respond.
And it looks like you have 2 questions there. Can you repeat those last 2 questions? You said, what are the most dangerous precedents
you see being set as part of our federal response to the current coronavirus? And also, how should mitigation of these types of events happen in the future?
Well, you know, I think that our President Donald Trump's response in regard to the closure of our borders to China was instrumental in stopping the widespread of this virus. Now, it has spread, as we know. However, it could have been even more deadly. And the World Health Organization had said at that time, we don't need to close the border. So I 100% support the precedent in regard to the commander-in-chief making that decision against the far left and closing our border for the safety first of Americans. So that is one thing that should go forward in regard to having the power to shut that border down. And you saw Nancy Pelosi there in the Chinatown during that time of closure, prior to the closure, her saying that everything is well, come to Chinatown and everything like this. And that type of rhetoric would have really put us in a great disadvantage had our president not acted. So that one precedent was not dangerous. I think it was the most helpful. In regard to how should we mitigate going thus forward, I think that the supply chain that we have to produce proper protective gear should be looked at, and we shouldn't outsource that to other countries, especially China. And I think that jobs going forward and national security is going to be at the forefront moving forward from this, and already has been on the radar, where we've started to produce a lot of our own equipment. So I think that another element that we need to look into is our own supply chain and bringing things back to American made. In addition, another area that I see to mitigate is the local level interaction is in regard to our Navajo and Dene lands, and cooperation on a local level. And Trump has led it to our governors to carry out this COVID response. And as you're seeing, it's been a very uneven and unhelpful response.
Thank you.
And constitutionally restrictive.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Montoya, you have 1 minute to respond to the same question.
In my belief, the dangerous precedents that have been set, I believe, for me anyway, is the closing of the churches. Right now, that's to me, this country was founded under the principles and the tenets of God being our creator. And when we shut our churches down as the number one thing that we shut down, that sets a dangerous precedent to me in terms of not being allowed to practice our faith. The other one, of course, is the dependence that we have now, in terms of this bailout. And I call it a bailout because they're giving a lot of money to a lot of people with the impression that we're going to be here to help you and we're going to be here to save you. It could set the minds of people, and it already has. Why should we continue to work when we can get more on unemployment and unemployment compensation? So the dependence on government is something that's not good.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. As we head into question 2, now this time Mr. Montoya will have the first 2 minutes. Sadie, can we have question 2, please?
As we move back into opening up our state, what is your recommendation to the governor to protect and support local businesses now and for future calamities?
Mr. Montoya, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. I think in terms of opening up, we have to be very deliberate in terms of how we do that. We have to do it responsibly, we have to do it safely, and we have to do it with sound science. In other words, the communities that are being impacted, we'll use McKinley County, Gallup as an example. Certainly, they're not in a position where they're going to be able to open up anytime soon based on those things. They can't safely reopen with the pandemic that's widespread as it is in that community. So we can take a county by county basis. Being a former school board member, I've always been into local control and allow, in this case, I would say counties, allow municipalities to determine whether or not they're able to do that based on, are they going to be able to do it safely, responsibly, and with good science and with safety always first and foremost in mind. Those are the things that I would recommend to the governor in terms of, let's not just have this blanket, shut everything down, shut the economy down, because a healthy economy is about social justice as well. We don't have a healthy economy, we don't have social justice, and it becomes a human life issue. If people aren't working, they're not being productive in their livelihoods and in their homes and communities, it begins to set a lot of different health issues, other health issues, mental health issues, issues such as what their diets and what they're eating. I mean, it just is a whole lot of, I guess, unintended consequences that result as of shutting down the economy. So let's make sure that we can be smart. Let's use some common sense in terms of how we reopen up the economy, allow people to get back to work, allow communities to start thriving, allow churches to open back up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Ms. Johnson, you have 1 minute to respond to the same question.
I think that stripping Americans of their First and Second Amendment rights that the governor has done has been a travesty to all political parties, all New Mexicans. You know, to prevent the right to assemble in a safe manner, we should never give up our constitutional rights. So I would protect and support small businesses in never giving up those constitutional rights, such as closing the gun storefronts. You know, we have our Lowe's and our Walmarts and our big box stores practicing safety, and we can do that at these small businesses also. And so I would promote opening at least at 20–25% capacity of these small businesses in low risk areas. And I've been very vocal about this here in Santa Fe and to our governor. And I always practice the CDC recommendations of proper facial covering and social distancing. So I think we need to start there, but I do not think that we need to strip the Americans of their rights. So I would definitely support, you know, not taking away those rights like the governor has. And that's something going forward we're going to need to look closely at in Congress and moving thus forward in regard to policies to plan for any reprisal of this COVID once we get it under control here.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So that concludes topic 1 on COVID-19. Let's press on. So topic 2 is education. Republicans generally agree that states and local authorities have the primary responsibility for education. That being said, what can our federal representatives do to help improve New Mexico's dire education system? As you know, New Mexico has a higher concentration of persons who do not finish high school than the nation as a whole, and it ranks last compared to other states. Our kids that do stay in school are not taught civics and history, and they certainly are not taught about the great American experiment, our belief in exceptionalism based on states' rights and the rights of individuals. Sadie, I have question 1, please.
What role, if any, should the federal government play in states' K-12 education system?
Ms. Johnson, you have 2 minutes to respond.
As far as school is concerned, I believe in the school choice. I believe that parents should have a say in the upbringing of their children. And I believe in less regulation. And I homeschooled my children, my daughter and my son, and we're doing that now, right? So I believe that, you know, we believe in the individual, we believe in the right of the parent. And so those are areas I would promote. Here in Santa Fe, you see a lot of rhetoric in the schools that push a lot of social agendas onto our children, and probably the greater US also. So I would definitely not promote, you know, a completely state government controlled situation where these social issues are pushed forth onto our children. I think parents need more say. I think teachers need more, they need less regulation. And I support the school choice for our children. I also support vocational schooling here in New Mexico to get our youth ready for jobs such as plumbers, welders. You know, we can even have meat processing facilities here in New Mexico. So let's look at those to give our youth skills they need to have jobs and careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Montoya, you have 1 minute to respond to the same question.
Okay, Anita, Sadie, I believe that the U.S. Department of Education needs to reorient its focus. One of the things in being a school board member, and I mentioned earlier, I believe in local control. And certainly one of the things that has not happened, especially from the federal level, and it was happening when I was on the school board, we have all of these mandates that come down and say, okay, this is how you're going to deal with IDEA, for example, Individuals with Disability Education Act. And they tell you, these are the parameters, this is what you have to do, and then go find the funding to do it. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. If we're going to mandate these things at the federal level, we got to make sure that that money follows in terms of providing those services. So I believe we have to reorient that so that the feds are not coming down with so many mandates on local school districts, allow local school districts to implement programs that are congruent within their communities. If it's a vocational educational program, implement those. If it's something that's going to provide a stairway, a highway for kids to get jobs, kids should be ready to get a job when they are graduating from high school. That's not happening now. You know, we have way too high of a high school dropout rate. Let's make sure that all these kids are graduating are ready to go to work on day one after they graduate.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Now we'll head into question 2 on education, and this one will first go to Mr. Montoya. Sadie, question 2, please.
Part of the reason our country is in its current state of deterioration is because of the heavy left-leaning and progressive takeover of our nation's education system. Do you have a plan or a strategy that would help usher in a revival of critical thinking, reading, writing, arithmetic, and civics?
Mr. Montoya, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Great question, Sadie. I certainly do. I believe that that's one of the things, and I've been talking about that for the last 20, 25 years, even when I was on the school board. That's one of the reasons that I ran for the school board, is because we weren't having those things being taught anymore. You know, I remember the civics class with Mr. Brazil that we had in terms of teaching us about government and the different roles within government. That's not being taught anymore. Our public school system has become an indoctrination for students in terms of socialism. They're not teaching them what they need to teach, in exactly what you said, Sadie: the reasoning, rationalization, arithmetic, writing. I didn't know they were teaching cursive writing anymore. Well, my granddaughter recently told me cursive writing's not being taught anymore, and that to me is that writing in itself is an art, and it's a skill, and it can lead to further creativity. It opens up the mind of the child when they're taught that type of writing. So, you know, in terms of bringing all of those back, we need to go back to the basics. I remember when we, on the school board, we started getting these progressive ideas from certain principals and teachers that go to universities that essentially, universities are anymore, they're a socialist training. It's an indoctrination, teaching our students to how to indoctrinate students when they become teachers. So we need to get, I mean, it's a whole, it's not just one system. We got to start look at it from top to bottom, from, you know, from the universities all the way down to the elementary schools, even the preschools. You know, what are our kids, you know, I have a grandson that's going to preschool now, a nursery. What are they being taught in terms of skills that they're going to be able to carry on and continue on as they go, you know, what we used to call seamlessly through their education process, from, you know, early childhood to pre-K to 6th grade, middle school, high school. So we need to, it needs to be revamped. We need to revamp it, and we cannot have this socialist curriculum that is being taught and pushed by teachers unions and other unions that have been way too involved and have certainly they messed up our education system.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Ms. Johnson, you have 1 minute to respond to the same question.
Thank you. You know, Sadie, I think you hit the nail on the head whenever you said the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, and then you're adding there the civics. I think that's what we need to stick to. And I think all of the social agendas or other values that people want to bring into the education of our children needs to really stop. And we really need to take a close look at what is being taught throughout the entire United States when young people think that communism is a good idea. So apparently there we're not teaching anything about history. And you're talking not that many generations back when you're talking about World War II. And for people to think that communism and socialist principles are a good way of life, we have a major problem. I would also look to, in this era of COVID, a lot of our children are home. The parent is homeschooling now, and that is totally transforming the education to a totally online situation. So we really need to look at the the circumstances now and moving forward? Are we going to have the kids continually being home with another wave of COVID? And so I would look to, maybe provide tax benefits to parents that are homeschooling, so they're not paying public schools monies that they could be using at home. That's one area that would be very important as a homeschool mother. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So that concludes topic 2 on the education. And now let's move to topic 3, which is the economy. The tax base of New Mexico hasn't changed much in 40 years. Tourism, revenue from extracting natural resources, particularly oil and gas, and federal facilities sustain our economy. Not only is this economy stagnant, but so too is our population. We've hovered at the 2 million mark for at least 40 years. In short, it seems we're stuck. Sadie, can we have question 1, please?
What, when elected, would you do to help grow New Mexico's tax base and economy?
Mr. Montoya, I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, this goes to you for 2 minutes.
There are several areas in New Mexico where there could be economic growth. But first, we have to stop the far left agenda to take jobs out of New Mexico by over-regulation, taxing, and shutting down, mining. Our oil and gas industry are getting rare metals from New Mexico. There's areas such as the film industry where we could have career New Mexicans be agents, be different providers of the film industry versus people coming in and out of New Mexico, working here and then just leaving. New Mexicans can have those jobs as a career. We can also have, like I said before, New Mexicans can have jobs such as meat packing. You're seeing such an extreme monopoly in our ranching system in the rural New Mexico. And if we can have processors, butchers, things like this, that would provide revenue for New Mexico. So those are 2 areas. And I also think education has a major, I guess you could say, nexus to why we do not have jobs here. We don't have jobs here because nobody wants to come to a state that ranks low in education. So they're going to be in tandem with each other. We need to increase our education, our rankings, and what we're providing to our children and our youth. And then we also need to find these new areas of a tax base. In addition, our spaceport initiatives could provide quite a lot of revenue to New Mexico. So those are just 3 areas that have great potential here, as well as working with our labs and having them branch off into the private sector to create more innovation and more technology and product here in New Mexico.
Time.
Thank you. Mr. Montoya, you have a minute to respond to the same question.
Okay. I believe that one of the things that our state is not business friendly. We've been an unfriendly business state for, I think, Anita, you said 40 years, probably been longer than that. It's probably been like 65 years that the Democrat Party has been in control of this state. And unfortunately, we have not seen any growth in that time. Some of the things that I would recommend, and as a congressional representative, I won't have a lot to say in terms of the state tax and what goes on there, but some recommendations in terms of what I would see that can be maybe done at the federal level is not mandate a minimum wage. I believe that minimum wage kills jobs. You don't allow the employer to pay people to jobs according to what they're doing. You're just paying them a flat minimum wage across the board. The other is the veterans tax. I think you mentioned, we're losing a lot of people. We have a lot of people, retirees, veterans that are taxed after they're already taxed, so we're double taxing people. Let's stop taxing people so much.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Sadie, can we have question 2, please?
If oil and gas prices remain low this year, what, as a representative, will you do to help support the industry that is the lifeblood of New Mexico?
Mr. Montoya, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Okay. I believe the New Mexico, again, because of the lack of a diverse tax base, and it's been recommended and suggested by Representative Jason Harper in the past that we need to redo our tax code. So that needs to be done in order for us not to be so dependent on oil and gas. One of the things that was happening before this whole pandemic occurred, that was New Mexico was doing great because of the oil and gas industry. One of the things that I will not do in Congress is I will not approve what is going to be proposed or is being proposed as the Green New Deal. That's certainly, to me, a job killer, number one. It's going to kill our economy. And, it just is not a good proposal. It's supposed to, create energy efficiency and income equality. And I don't see the reality in terms of how that's going to happen with this Green New Deal. So that's something that as a congressman, I cannot support. It will kill jobs here in New Mexico. And let's look at how we can utilize our laboratories. We have the Los Alamos National Laboratory in our back. It's literally in my backyard here in Poake. How can we utilize them in terms of being able to spin off jobs? But again, in order to do that, we need to work with the legislature. We need to make sure that we're getting people in there that are going to be friendly to businesses, attract businesses here so that we can diversify our tax base. We're way too dependent on federal spending and the state government as well. Without you look at this district, without the Air Force bases, Cannon, without the Los Alamos National Laboratory, and without state government, there's really not a whole lot of major industry. We have a lot of small businesses, farmers, ranchers that are able to do well, but we need to diversify and make sure our tax base isn't dependent on one or two sources.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Ms. Johnson, you have 1 minute on the same question.
I just have a question for Mr. Montoya. Can you clarify what you mean by we do not need to be dependent on oil and gas?
Mr. Montoya, you can have 30 seconds to respond, starting now.
I did not say that we cannot be dependent on oil and gas. I said that we are right now dependent on oil and gas because of our current tax structure. So unless we diversify our tax base and make it business friendly, we are going to be dependent on oil and gas.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, you have roughly 45 seconds left.
Okay, so I come from a small business family who is in the oil and gas industry of the Permian Basin. And as you know, prior to this pandemic, 39% of our state budget came from oil and gas. And it has been not only good for the state of New Mexico, but also for our national security. We were the net exporter here in the United States, outpacing Russia and Saudi Arabia. And this allows us to have the national security stance that we need. So based on your question, I would definitely help support that oil and gas sector during these temporary times right now where we're all home and we're not using oil and gas. I would also increase infrastructure and transition some of the oil and gas employees to building pipelines in Farmington, coming up with other uses for our natural gas during this time. We could build infrastructure and those employees would have the technical expertise to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez-Johnson. Now that concludes topic 3 on economics. Topic 4,
You're right.
we know that illegal immigration across the southern border creates a humanitarian hardship for migrants and legal and financial problems for the U.S. In 2016, 750,000 illegals came into our country and it was considered normal. Then in 2019, we were suddenly on track for an annual illegal immigration of twice that, or 1.5 million, before President Trump threatened tariffs on Mexico if it didn't help. And just as troubling as the number of illegals coming across the border is the number of visa overstays each year. In 2018, we had 650,000 overstays. And let's not forget that the murderers behind 9/11 attack were here on overstayed visas. The first question will go to Ms. Johnson. Sadie, question number 1, please.
What recommendation would you have to improve the immigration process here in the United States?
You have 2 minutes, Ms. Johnson.
Well, it's going to first start with the wall. And in Spanish, we call it el muro. And that is going to have to be put up as a structure to show that we are a sovereign country. You know, I live here in Santa Fe, and back in the old days, you know, we had commerce and we had transfer between the border with no wall. But as we have seen over the years, beginning in the 80s, things have gotten more violent, and since then even more violent. And here in New Mexico, in this District 3, we are fighting an opiate crisis, among other drugs. As you know, not only in Albuquerque, we have the top portion of Bernalillo is in our district. And here in Santa Fe, it's an underground, unspoken situation here in Santa Fe with opioid addiction, as well as you know there in Española. So I would be for supporting and recommending a physical wall, supporting Donald Trump, our president, and more agents on the ground, and also utilizing technology because we know it's a very vast and diverse border. So for the areas that we cannot put the wall, where the Rio Grande intersects, you know, we need to use some other securing mechanisms. But, you know, if I had to convince the voter going into the general election to get in line with this wall, all I need to take them to is a neonatal intensive care unit where you have opioid addicted babies. And I don't think we'll have any problem flipping this district red, supporting that wall. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Montoya, you have 1 minute for the same question.
Okay, thank you, Anita Statman. That's a question that has been asked probably for the last 30 years. I ran for this seat as a Democrat back in '08. Nothing has changed in the 12 years since I ran. So it's time that we actually get serious and elect people who are serious about doing what's right, as opposed to trying to get reelected every time. So I would look at the whole comprehensive immigration reform. It has to be done. We have to make it easy and accessible for those people to come here legally. A lot of people want to come here and they want to come here legally, but some of the parameters that we set up make it difficult for them to be able to afford to go through the process. So let's make it fair for everyone across the board so that it's affordable, accessible, and people can do that. And the wall is part of that. I call it a toolbox. The toolbox has to be looked at and worked completely. We need immigration reform.
Thank you.
Anita, I have one clarifying question in regard to Mr. Montoya's last statement about...
Ms. Johnson, you don't have a moment to talk here.
Okay, thank you.
You can address it maybe in your closing remarks.
Okay, great.
Ms. Johnson, you have unless that was the beginning of your response, excuse me. Ms. Johnson, you do have 1 minute to respond.
Oh. No, that was Harry that responded.
No, that was Harry. Yeah.
So yeah, we're back to next question.
Next question.
I'm sorry.
So being that my name was brought up, can I respond to that or no?
I don't think she even got to an issue.
Oh.
Yeah, no, yeah. So Alexis went first and then Harry responded. So now it's Harry's turn to test and two, yes.
Mr. Montoya, you'll have 2 minutes to respond to this question. Sadie, please.
Yes. What do you think is the best legal treatment of the Obama-labeled dreamers, anchor babies, and those who have lived in the USA for a long time?
Mr. Montoya, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Okay. In terms of the dreamers, one of the unfortunate realities is that these kids were brought here and were born here. Actually, some of them weren't even brought here; they were born here, and what they have known for all of their lives is this particular culture, this particular civilization for them. I think that we need to maybe, and again, this is going to be part of the immigration reform process. How are we going to treat them? I don't believe that they should just be given automatic citizenship. I think they could probably be given the option of becoming an American citizen. But to just be given the citizenship I look back on, and I would refer people to St. Thomas Aquinas and what he says about immigration reform. And that, people say, well, he is a medieval guy. Well, you know what? It applies what he said back in 1500s to now. And that's we need to be deliberate in terms of how we allow people in here. We need to be selective about how we allow people in here. And he even suggests that sometimes it may take 2 or 3 generations in order for them to accept what is going to be for the common good of all the people in this country. That's what we have to look at. What is the common good? How are these people going to integrate themselves into our country and what we stand for as the United States of America? That's not being done now. I would refer people also to another book by Michelle Malkin, Open Borders, Inc. This whole immigration, it's a business, it's an industry. People need to learn about it. They need to know that they are being offered to come into the United States. They're going to get housing, they're going to get medical care, they're going to get food stamps, things to eat. And we just need to look at it a lot more seriously than what we have been.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Ms. Johnson, now you have a minute to respond.
Okay, so first of all, back to the wall. We have to have a physical structure to prevent the illegal crossing of women who are putting themselves in great risk to come over to the border, knowing that they can get here and tell the Border Patrol agents it's too far to get back, and in fact it is, and so they end up giving birth here in the United States. So we need to prevent that from happening in the first place. So I 100% support the wall as not only a symbolism, but a physical structure to state our sovereignty. So it's going to start from there. As far as the Dreamers are concerned, we have to have them go through a legal process to become a citizen. And this is very necessary so that they are not living as second-class citizens in the United States, hiding and having to use other people's social security cards and having to bow their head because they can't say, this is who I am. That is a sad way to live a life, and we have to stand up for them, and part of that is going to be getting them to become U.S. citizens in a legal process. So that is what I would support 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And that concludes topic 4 on immigration. Topic 5 is healthcare. The Democrat-only passage of Obamacare ushered in a top-down federal program, which is costly, provides poor coverage, and is underfunded. If you've been in it, it's miserable. Democrat candidates for all offices up and down the ticket support Medicare for all, including illegals, or, as Joe Biden does, support Medicare for people over 60, possibly destroying the private health care network that most people today enjoy. Sadie, can we please have question 1, which will go to Ms. Johnson first for 2 minutes.
What parts of the healthcare system concern you the most, and what would you do about it?
Ms. Johnson, you have 2 minutes.
Well, one area that I have seen here in New Mexico is the disparity regarding our veterans' care. You have some people in the north getting very good care, whereas maybe some people down here near Albuquerque not. So I would definitely promote accountability with our veterans and making sure that they are taken care of. They're giving our lives for us. So I promote holding that system accountable there in our VA. I will protect our Medicare and our Medicaid because that is for the people that aren't able to care for themselves, such as our elderly, our veterans, and babies. However, everybody in between, we should have the ability of choice. That's what Republicans stand on, and have our own private plans if we so choose, and our private doctors as we choose. And of course, we're going to take in pre-existing conditions. And so that is where I stand with there, is that opening it up to the free market, reducing our prescription health care costs, manufacturing prescriptions here in the United States to reduce those costs. And so those are some of the elements that, I stand on, which would be, providing an increased care on our veteran system, and also working together as far as you're seeing the travesty in the Diné lands right now in our Navajo Nation. We need to work together locally much better and have task force that can target these areas where this COVID-19 is rising. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Montoya, you have 1 minute for the same question.
The thing that concerns me the most about our healthcare system right now is that it's being pushed to a government-run system. I mean, essentially, we can have two systems, a government-run system or a free enterprise system. I'm for a free enterprise system. The government-run system, which is Obamacare, has led to massive failures in terms of allowing patients, consumers, customers to choose and keep their doctor. That didn't happen. To allow more accessibility for critical healthcare needs. That's not happening. What it's done is it has made healthcare unaffordable and inaccessible to the majority of the people that are part of Obamacare. So that part concerns me the most. And in terms of what I would do about it, I would allow and create a free enterprise system, a free enterprise model, so that people are essentially able to make a choice to have the doctor that they want to go to get the care that they need. And the free enterprise model is the way that we're going to do that.
Thank you. Sadie, can we have question 2?
What would you propose to lower the cost of pharmaceutical drugs in the United States of America?
Mr. Montoya, this goes to you first for 2 minutes.
I think that certainly the thing that we need to do is bring a lot of that manufacturing back here to the United States. I think one of the things that has been clear during this whole pandemic is that we are way too dependent on China for way too much. Well, let's start with the information that we get from them. You know, has it been truthful? Have they been upfront in terms of what they've given us in terms of this whole pandemic and how it started and what's been done? I don't think that's true. I think we've given a lot of false information. So when we rely on someone else, when we could have had this and we have had it in the past, all the manufacturing of the pharmaceuticals here in this country, we need to bring it back here. We need to allow, and it gets back to the free enterprise model as well, allow that free enterprise for different pharmaceuticals. We have the national laboratories here. You know, I would welcome them to become a part of this whole finding a cure for what we need to do for this pandemic and for this virus. Why not utilize, you know, what we already have here in this country? So let's bring the pharmaceutical, the manufacturing back here. Let's make our country less dependent on other countries in order to keep the cost down as well. You know, a lot of people sometimes even go to our border state in the south in Mexico to get pharmaceuticals that are going to be a lot cheaper than what they're going to pay here in the United States. So let's bring it back. Let's be less dependent on the China and their government, and let's make it competitive and take the big profits out of pharmaceuticals. That's the other thing that, you know, our Congress people here have been talking about. Oh, they're going to lower the price of pharmaceuticals. What have they done? They haven't done anything. They've just been concerned about getting reelected and getting those campaign contributions from those big companies. So let's make them accountable, and I will be accountable. You know, I will make sure that those influences aren't there in terms of what I'm going to do in terms of making decisions that are going to benefit all of the people here in the United States. So we need to bring that manufacturing back, take the profits out of the pharmaceuticals, and fight for price controls.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, you have 1 minute to respond to the same question.
I think competition and free market is a great idea. It's part of our American capitalist way. And if we could apply that to prescription drugs, that would lower the cost. So going to generic drugs, and, you know, we've talked about, I mentioned before, you know, obviously creating the drugs here in the US, but, you know, getting more people involved in this business would reduce the costs. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Now that concludes topic 5 on healthcare. Let's start with topic 6, our last one, The first question again will go to Ms. Johnson for 2 minutes. The topic is federal spending. Federal spending has grown rapidly over the last decade, leading to substantial budget deficits that will cripple the economy. COVID-19 has exacerbated that as lawmakers spend trillions of additional dollars and further increase the deficit in the name of helping. They're trying to help employers, laid off employees, and certain sectors of the economy, such as air and travel. Sadie, can we have question 1, please?
How do you propose to control spending and begin the process of reducing our national deficit?
Ms. Johnson, you have 2 minutes.
Sadie and Anita, at this current time with this pandemic, it is very difficult to, go to the whole fiscal conservatism that I have always promoted, because we're in a silent war situation. And if you look at it like that, if we are not stimulating those small businesses, what would the world look like? It would be, the Great Depression. And so we have to be able to have that CARES plan and promote the cogs of the economy to continue to go. So out of this COVID-19 war situation, I'm always a fiscal conservative. But right now, if we don't act and do what we're doing, we would have complete chaos. So we have to stimulate those small businesses and those families to continue. And we need to open up our businesses. But as far as coming within any type of budget, I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen anywhere in the near time future because of this situation. And we are not out of the clear with this. So of course, going out of this COVID-19, we would look to start reducing that deficit and focus on necessities only. So we're not going to be funding the Kennedy Center for them to furlough employees. We're going to have to stick to the basic necessities, and that's going to cause a lot of pain, but that's what we do in every household, is we make budget decisions. So moving out of here, we need to definitely take out all pork and look to reduce the deficit, but that's not going to be for some time, and that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Mr. Montoya, you have 1 minute for the same question.
Yeah, in terms of controlling the spending, I think what's gone on so far with the CARES Act and what's been done has been somewhat reckless in a sense, but then it's kind of in one of those situations where, they have to kind of give in order to get. I think it's time to just stop that whole mentality and take a look at, again, what's going to be in the best interest of the American people, the people that are suffering as a result of this pandemic. So in terms of controlling spending, we need to make sure now that anything that comes out in any other stimulus or CARES Act funding is going directly for the incidents that are occurring as a result of the COVID-19, the Wuhan coronavirus. Make sure that that's what that spending is going to go for. In terms of reducing the deficit, one of the things that has been proposed, and I mentioned it, is cutting taxes. Let's cut taxes. Let's allow some of that financial burden that the taxpayer is being burdened with to be eased up in order to allow a more free enterprise market to occur in our financial markets. So the spending, gosh, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done. We need to have essentially the budget balance that's required.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. And Sadie, question 2, please.
Do you think the federal stimulus spending to support the recovery of our economy from COVID-19 is enough? Why or why not?
Mr. Montoya, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Okay, I think that at this point, we don't even know the answer to that question. And the reason I say that is we come up with another package, which I understand Pelosi and Schumer are now working on another multi-trillion-dollar package in order to, again, look at what can they get in there for the special interests, how can they fund Planned Parenthood and a lot of organizations that have nothing to do with this pandemic that's going on. And we need to make sure that, again, these are going to go to the small businesses, to the people that are being impacted. We can't just have additional spending that's right now, in my opinion, we don't know what that money is being used for in a way where we can accurately assess it's being effective, and we need more here. Because, I mean, when you get places like Harvard that have been given, some of the funding as part of the CARES Act, and the Los Angeles Lakers who received some funding as part of the CARES Act. I mean, give me a break. Why do these guys need, that type of funding for this epidemic, this pandemic? Harvard has their foundation that has millions of dollars in there. So let's look at, before we start spending and doing anything else with additional funding, let's be accountable for what we have right now that's out there. Let's not put this on the back of our children and our grandchildren, because they're the ones that are going to be burdened with having to pay this debt back. Let's not put in socialist policies and socialist type funding. And in fact, Pelosi and Schumer even called this one Rooseveltian. In my opinion, what Roosevelt did was created a huge welfare state in this country. He began to create a welfare country. We don't need that again.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Ms. Johnson, you have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, so what we have right now with our April jobs report is a 14.7% unemployment rate. Okay, and we have 78% of those employees temporarily out of work, 11% permanently out of work. So I'm hopeful that if we can get through this transition and get our economy back on track, that 78% will get back to their jobs. Okay, so that 11% that is permanently closed, we should look at that. What can be done to stimulate our economy, or if we even need to do that at that point, or if they can just get back on their feet. We're going to have to take a look-see approach. Half of the stimulus payments have been made to individuals. There's still another half out there to go. So I think that before we just start printing money, we really do need to see how we can get back on our feet. And that's going to be getting us back to work. So we need to lift off these restrictions that the governors are placing on each of their states in these low-risk areas, and getting our small businesses back to work. And that starts here in New Mexico.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And thank you, candidates. That concludes topic 6 on federal spending and all of our questions. And now to conclude the debate, it's time for your closing remarks. In reverse order, from opening remarks, Mr. Montoya, you'll go first. Ms. Johnson, you'll go second, and you both have 3 minutes. Mr. Montoya, when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you all again, Federated Republican Women, Anita, Sadie, Sharon, for giving us this opportunity to express what our beliefs are, what we feel needs to be done in order to advance this congressional district, this state, and this country to a place where it is more in resemblance of what our forefathers had in terms of their concept of allowing us to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Right now, you mentioned in terms of the whole pro-life issue. I've always been pro-life. I've always been pro-Second Amendment. And if you hear anything in the background, that's my dog who's sniffling, so I'm sorry about that. I just believe that we need to get back to those constitutional tenets that we have in this country. I believe that I am the candidate, voters out there, who can win this congressional district race and defeat the eventual Democrat nominee. I have proven as an elected official, both on the Oaxaca School Board and as Santa Fe County Commissioner, that I can win elections in this part of the state. And this is the part of the state that's critical if we're going to turn this into a red seat. Moderate Democrats, independents, Republicans know me, they trust me, I have their confidence. I know that together we're going to be able to turn this seat into the seat that is going to be represented by someone who has traditional New Mexican values. I've always had traditional New Mexican values. I have fought for you for our people here in this state and in this country also, for the values that we see that need to be continued on in terms of the traditional New Mexican values that we have here in this state. So again, my name is Harry Montoya. We've already started with early voting. Absentee ballots have been, you can request those as well. So if you don't do the early voting, please go out for Harry Montoya. I will continue to serve you in the way that I've always served you in the past, and that is with humility and always putting the people first. You know, my dad told me that, you know, there's politicians and there's statesmen. You know, politicians take care of themselves, statesmen take care of the people. I've always prided myself in being a statesman, and I will continue to do so as your next congressman. So again, I'm Harry Montoya, and I respectfully and humbly from the bottom of my soul ask for your vote. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Ms. Johnson, when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I know you told me during this time I could ask a question of Mr. Montoya from earlier. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask that question right now. Harry, you were talking about immigration, and you said you wanted to make it easy and accessible for anybody to come over to the United States. You wanted to simplify that process. Are you talking about not having a merit-based system, just everyone to coming over? Can you please respond to that?
No.
Mr. Montoya?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson? You have,
I don't think you answered the question. It was just a no. I'm not. Do you promote a merit-based system? You said no.
Well, you asked two different questions in there. You asked, do you support a merit-based system, or do you support people just coming over with open borders? No to that. Yes to a merit-based system.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Johnson, you now have 2 minutes.
Okay, my name is Alexis Martinez Johnson. Muchísimas gracias. Your candidate is going to need the vitality and the energy to get that Democrat vote. We cannot do it on Republican numbers alone. So you're going to need someone like an anti-AOC, and I am that person. I have the skill set to traverse various groups from Indian country, Yate, to our Hispanic community, and I've been making the strides and turning in the votes. And that's what you're going to need to put up a fight to Teresa Ledger Fernandez that's going to come out as a Democratic forerunner. You're going to need someone that can go toe to toe. I'm an environmental engineer. I will fight back on the Green New Deal. I am a mother of 4 with children that were born early, and I will fight those abortion measures from the far left. I am pro-gun, and I'm a native-born New Mexican. I look forward to winning this race, and with your vote, we can do that and take it to the far left and finally turn District 3 red for Republicans and our President, Donald Trump. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. On behalf of Four Corners, Taos, Los Alamos, and Santa Fe Federated Republican Women and our partners in county GOP clubs, we extend our thanks to both of you for running. We appreciate the time, money, and other sacrifices involved. We also thank you for your time today to help educate the voters about your platform. And thank you to our New Mexico voters who are about to vote. Please, if you are healthy enough to go, please go to the available polling places in your county. Expect there to be lines, and yes, expect to wear a mask. We thank you for viewing this video and for being New Mexico's patriots.